Hey everybody, today's Building Wealth Together monthly meeting is going to be pre-recorded because I have a prior commitment, but the content is gold, so stay tuned. Hey everybody, I'm JJ Conway, and today's Building Wealth Together monthly meeting is a special treat. For those of you who are new, we have recently started a study of The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles. So I'm going to start off with what Building Wealth Together is all about, and then we're going to jump right into today's lesson. For the month of March, we are covering the topic of authentic abundance, a guided study of the science of getting rich. Before we get into the actual main presentation, first I'm going to tell you a little bit about who Building Wealth Together is, who we are. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about who I am, JJ Conway. I'm going to give you two promises, and then we're going to get into the meat of what we're here to talk about today. Building Wealth Together is not a get-rich-quick group. What we are is get rich right, and there are a lot of legit ways to get rich. We believe in education, ethics, and accountability, and we offer financial investment and entrepreneurial education. We like to think that at Building Wealth Together, we are solutions, not pitch. Our third Saturday of the month meetings are always free. Those of you who've been with us since the last 6 years, you know we've always been Thursday. We're Thursday. Every third Thursday, and then every first Thursday, and then every first Saturday. Now we're on every third Saturday. The meetings are free, but there's also benefits to the membership. I want to encourage you to join. I'm going to skip over some of these benefits today because we are in the process of regrouping, and with the pandemic, we're really not focusing much on membership right now. We're still making a lot of our content free. But once this pandemic is really kind of settled out, you're going to see some of those broadcasts drying up, okay? So if you're interested, get in now while the price is the lowest it absolutely will ever be. Want to give a shout out to our lifetime sponsors who helped us back in the day when we were getting started. And I want to talk to you a little bit about who I am. Many of you know me as a financial coach. Many of you also know that I was at one time over $845,000 of divorce debt. So I know a thing or two about getting out of debt, and having been in so much debt colors how I approach money now. I now empower women to improve their lives through financial and real estate education. This is, for those of you who are watching the slides and not just listening to the MP3, this is a picture of my boys. My big why originally was always to make sure that my son, and then later his brother when he came along 10 years later, were never homeless, to make sure they were never depending on the handouts of others, that they never would have to sleep in another Walmart parking lot or in a road stop parking lot if they didn't want to, right? That's where it started. That was my original motivation. And now my big why is to really change entire communities by empowering citizens with wealth management, entrepreneurial, and investment. I'm going to make you two promises today. One, I'm going to teach you skills you can absolutely put into practice today. That's the goal of every one of these classes. Whatever it is that we're teaching, I want to give you nuggets that you can put in practice today, and people around you can see a difference tomorrow, all right? If not tonight. I'll also give you the opportunity to learn more. My track record on this hasn't been very good lately, so I'm just going to give you the link right now. It's if you go to jjclink.com/SOGR, stands for Science of Getting Rich, you can dig deeper. You can get the class that allows you to put more of these principles to work in your life. Okay? So with that, let's go ahead and get into it. This topic of our ability to, and really, in a sense, our calling to build wealth is challenging. And I think it's probably one of the things you have to buy into. You have to. You can't be ambiguous about your right to be rich and your worthiness, your relationship with God, who is the source of all creation, and the idea that you have limitless potential in Him. And if you have this limitless potential in Him, then shouldn't you bring it forward? If you do bring it forward, then you're going to be providing a service and adding value. And when you do that, you become wealthy. And becoming wealthy doesn't make anybody else poor, right? You become wealthy by the creative method, which is what I teach. It's not competitive. And so you becoming wealthy doesn't make anybody else poorer, all right? And of course, there's all these caveats, right? When we say we're talking about money, we're not talking about robbing a bank. We're not talking about cheating anybody. We're not talking about sales manipulation. And we're not talking about loving money. We're talking about developing our highest potential for earning, for adding value, for walking in abundance. Wayne Dwyer asked this question that really brought it home for me. He said, look, Can you starve enough to feed one person? Can you be poor enough to make anybody else wealthy? You can't. And he made millions in the self-help industry. He had a fantastic life and he gave it all away. And the interesting thing is, he was talking about wealth requiring a spiritual walk before he even understood what he was talking about. It was only later in life that his eyes came open, or at least according to Wikipedia, right? So this is a challenging book for some people. And I think it's very necessary that Wallace Wattles starts off right in the beginning to say, what do you think about your right to be rich? Is that what you're saying? What do you think about this? And if you don't believe that you have a right to be rich, well, where did that idea come from? I think that's a big takeaway. What are the assumptions that go with the rich, maybe? And what's really wrong with being rich? Now, I'm not saying everyone's going to be rich, right? Because Jesus said, the poor you have with you always. But Jesus didn't say you and I have to be one of the poor. He didn't ask all the apostles to give up their wealth. Americans, especially in Christianity, we assume that because they were mostly fishermen, that they weren't wealthy, but that's not true. Back then, wealth had a more physical component than it does now. There was no internet, no intellectual property back then. So most of them were wealthy through trades, or you had folks like Matthew, who was a tax collector, but most of them were wealthy through trades. So let me ask you something. Instead of thinking about what's the worst that could happen if you get rich, think about what's the downside of humanity if you don't. Because I've really come to believe that the world needs God's people rich. And we know what bad people do with money. Oh my goodness. But what about you? What about you? If you received an inheritance tonight, and after you paid off all your debts, okay, you had $1 million left over, would you be willing to tithe 10% of that? I mean, I can't see you, right? This is virtual, but I bet every single person watching would say, oh, yes, I would, absolutely. So let me ask you this, okay? Where would you give that $100,000 tithe? Actually, I would probably tithe on the whole amount, but that's just me. If we were in person, I bet every single one of you would be able to name a favorite charity or somebody that you really care about, given to animals, children, cures for different diseases, pulling ladies out of human trafficking, right? So if everybody watching this or listening to this had $1 million and tithed off of it, that $100,000, right in this little group, we've solved all the world's problems right here. That's why you need to be rich. That's why the world needs you rich. We're all giving $100,000. And I know in this instance and where we're at right now, I understand that sounds like a lot of money. But once you make $1 million, 100,000 doesn't seem like it's that big. It doesn't seem like it's really that much money. You'd be surprised at the difference that just a little bit of money can make. I mean, how many of you would be able to breathe easier with just an extra $1,000 this month? Depending on your town, an extra $1,000 can pay a single mom's water bill for a year. Could you do a lot of good with an extra $1,000 to tithe? And what do you need to really change your life? I know many of you watching want $1 million, but what would it take for you to just breathe and relax? Maybe an extra $2,000 a month? For most people, it doesn't take a lot more just to be able to have a nice life where you can be creative and really flow. There's a neat exercise I encourage you to do. Maybe we'll make it an actual challenge right up before we do Think and Grow Rich, right? It's an exercise that, that you pick something every day where you're going to spend all the money. And on the first day, you get $1,000 in the morning, $2,000 in the afternoon. The next day, $3,000 in the morning, $4,000 in the afternoon. It goes up by $1,000 each time. And you try to pick something you're going to spend, and you got to spend all the money. And it's surprising how quickly you run out of things. And suddenly you realize you don't need as much as you want. By the time you get all the things you immediately want, after a while, you're like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do with all this money, right? So you're like, oh, well, maybe I'll get this or maybe I'll get that, this trip or that trip. Well, I might as well get this, right? I don't think we need as much as we think, but we do need a little bit to create that peace and that space to help us stay creative. And it's amazing when good people have money, because what they usually do is they give a lot of it away and they make a change for the better in the world. In today's world, either you've got money in the bank or you got to have confidence in your ability to work, go out, and earn money. There's no jobs for life anymore, are there? I mean, there really hasn't been for a while. If you want to be secure, you can't rely on the company you're employed in. You've got to rely on your ability to go and get a different job or run money a different way or find a way to make money if things go south. And a lot of this actually has a spiritual component to it. We're talking about living in as a body, soul, and a spirit. But in this book, Wallace Wattles is specifically dealing with the physical plane, right? The physical plane of money. But even very spiritual people can still stress out and be extremely anxious about money worries. I remember that during sequestration in the United States. My whole church was freaking out because the government was shutting down and they were not paying and they were projecting to furlough people and people's pay got cut. And it's almost like the Lord allowed us to suffer that because it sure enough brought us closer to Him, right? I think collectively we prayed more that year than the 5 years prior. I ain't lying. How am I going to be able to provide for my family? How am I going to be able to take care of my kids? How am I going to be able to keep the doors of the church open? I mean, those are real concerns when you don't have money. And Waddles says repeatedly, the way the world is organized now, you need money. So in the preface, he's saying, don't worry about the theory or how all this is going to work. Just do it. And in the first chapter, he's establishing your birthright to be rich, and he's requiring that you believe it. He's requiring that you believe it for you, not just everyone else. See, if you don't think you deserve it, that is a significant obstacle because belief drives behavior, and you will sabotage every time. And believe me, I was a master at sabotage. And so in the chapter we're going to talk about today, which is chapter 2, The Science of Getting Rich, there is a science of getting rich. He says, okay, if you're willing to do it and you believe you're worthy of it, then the next question is, can you do it? Do I really have the potential? Am I capable of doing it? And if I do it, is it going to work? And what he's saying throughout this chapter is it's a science. It's not a theory. This will absolutely work if you do it. And in this chapter, he's going to introduce us a little bit to the science. But as we alluded to in the last one, for those of you who were with me, already in the formula, a key part of this formula is that you have to believe it. You have to believe that you have a right to be wealthy. Your belief is an unconscious saboteur otherwise, isn't it? And it'll ruin everything without you even realizing it. And you'll call it fate. Some of us will even call it the Lord. And it's really our limiting subconscious beliefs. So I think what this chapter does is it removes all of our, yeah, but you don't understand. And it removes all of our, you don't know what I've been through. You don't know what it's like. It removes all that conditional stuff that keeps us feeling okay with playing small, with living less than God created us to be. See, this chapter removes all our excuses. And that's what he's saying because he's like, I know it's not fair. Everyone's at different places. And he starts walking through. We're going to walk through them here. In Building Wealth Together, we're an international company. So some people are born in some areas steeped in poverty. Others are born in very privileged. And then there's everything in between. And he's saying, okay, all that accounts for something, but it's not an excuse. No matter where you are, starting this will work for you. If one can, all can. And I think he makes it really clear throughout the book that if one person from your town, one person from your city, one person from your country has been able to pull themselves out of these kinds of destitute conditions and circumstances, then you can too. For me, it's almost kind of weird, but I use the excuse of, well, I have sensory processing issues, and I don't read between the lines well, and I'm poor with people, and I never knew my bio father, and yada, yada, yada. It was like my sympathy card, or get out of jail card, right? Get out of jail free card, an excuse card, or an invitation to my own private pity party, because ain't nobody else was coming. It reminds me of a former client I had. I had really high hopes for her, and then I moved away, and I was really surprised when she called me a couple years later, and she hadn't moved forward in her life. She'd come into some money, but instead of calling me when she first got it, so I, the awesome queen of cash flow financial planner, could have helped her maximize it, she called me a year later when it had almost run out. And I'm talking to her, and she's having none of my suggestions and just refuses to take action. And man, isn't it the worst? You know, when you know what people need to do, and that's what he's saying here. He's like, these are steps you can take, and they're not easy. They're simple, but they're not easy. You know, and it's like you really want folks to succeed, but they have to want it for themselves. Even worse is when spiritual people evoke their devotion as a reason why they're not moving forward. Like, well, I'm waiting on God telling me what to do. I've prayed about it. I'm just waiting for the Lord to open up the door. And sure, there are absolutely times when the Spirit leads me, peace, be still. Especially as busy and how I think and go around and around. Absolutely. But you know, there's more times that the Spirit thunks me on the head and says, lady, you need to stop being lazy or petty or bitter or entitled and get moving. How many times has the Lord thunked me on the head and said, get off of Facebook and stop complaining you don't have time to do your business. Or you don't have time to spend with your kids. Or you don't have time to spend with your husband. You had time. You spent it all on Facebook. But if you're leading people, if you're coming from a platform of empowerment where you're trying to help people change their lives, right? And you're behind on your bills, or you're failing to do as much as you can to assure your health, or you're constantly fighting with your spouse, well, then you're not living empowered. And your message is not integrous. You gotta be integrous with your word and your life. And when we're not integrous, we give off the wrong energy. Our energy is just off. And the wrong energy repels the quality people that we need and we want to do business with or have relationships with. And then that off energy, it attracts the wrong people into our lives. So you wonder why you keep having the same kind of boyfriend or girlfriend over and over. You are attracting that person into your life by your energy, okay? And so I was taking a class by one of my mentors, and he said whenever he talks to people about their goals, they tell him the reason why they can't do something, and he always asks himself, how convenient is that? How convenient is that, right? There's always a hidden game, isn't there? There's always a secondary game. Maybe not always, but very, very often, there's something that you're getting out of your excuse that you can't do it. John Maxwell said one time, talking about preparing as a speaker, that when someone asked him, do you ask God for help? He said, absolutely, I ask God for help, but I don't go empty-handed. I do John's best first. I love that. You know, even like John Lewis used to say, pray and move your feet, right? Faith is the substance of things hoped for. When you really have faith, it moves you to produce substance. Faith is in the spiritual realm. Substance is in the physical realm. Okay? When you believe in the spiritual, it manifests in the natural, the physical realm. Okay? And so, you know, I think this book is a little bit in your face. You know, he's challenging you. He's really challenging what you believe. And you have to challenge the conviction of what you believe. Why do you really believe that? And if you do believe that, how does it serve you? How does that belief serve you? And is that belief a truth or is it a fact? Look, the fact may be that you don't have the money, but is that really your truth? The fact may be that you're a high school dropout, but is it really truth that you can't become wealthy and you can't live out your dream? No. Fact is, I've got to grow from where I'm planted. But the truth is, I've got limitless potential because I'm plugged in to a limitless source. So quit it with all the belief systems, BS, excuses. All right? I like that, belief systems. I want to write a book. I just don't think as a pastor it will go over very well. But I want to write a book, No More BS. Belief systems. There is a science of getting rich, and it's an exact science like algebra or arithmetic. There are certain laws that govern the process of acquiring riches. And once these laws are learned and obeyed by any person, he or she will attract and get rich with mathematical certainty, okay? And so what we're going to go through, for those of you who join me on the deep dive into this book, is we're going to talk about 7 laws that govern the way that we think and behave, and that when God created the universe obeys his command, and that command is through these laws, which the creative process is part of, okay? So when he talks about making money through these laws, it's not just making money. It's the creative process of all things. The Lord created all things. He made us in his image. So we have the ability to create things. And when we follow his laws, it's how all things are created. So we're going to be covering those laws. And not granted, I'm not going to have at my disposal the time to cover every single one of those laws today. That's why I'm going to give you an opportunity to dig deeper later, okay? But I've already mentioned the law of cause and effect. And so we're going to talk about the law of polarity, the law of rhythm, the law of perpetual transmutation of energy, the law of gender, the law of incubation, the law of gender and incubation. We're going to talk about all those things, and all those are going to come out through the science of getting rich, because I really think that the fundamental ideas that he shares here, they're really layered through application and understanding of those laws, okay? So let's get into the book here. We're in chapter 2. If you don't have this book, you can get it on Amazon, or you can get an electronic copy at no charge in the course, okay? So he says here on line 115, and for those of you who are new to my body of work, one of the things I like to do with these classic works that we're allowed to reprint is I like to reprint them with the line numbers, so you can no matter which version of the book you have, you've got the same line numbers. So you've got the Kindle version that doesn't have all this writing space, you got the same line numbers, all right? So here on 115, he says there's an exact science of getting rich. Line 119, the ownership of money and property comes as a result of doing things in a certain way. So those who do things in this certain way, whether on purpose or accidentally, get rich, while those who do not do things in this certain way, no matter how hard they work or how able they are, remain poor. Now, you and I both know we've been frustrated when we watch other people get ahead or other people build wealth, and they're not working near as hard as we are. They're not nearly as capable as we are. They're not nearly as nice as we are. All right? And so I one thing that I want to focus on real quick here, or that I want to mention before we move on, is that it's really important to understand that you can be an unconscious competent here. Okay, there were times when I was building several of my past businesses, web design, Mary Kay, real estate. I had patches of success and rapid and huge success. But the problem was I didn't know what I was doing, so I couldn't duplicate it. I wasn't able to replicate it. I couldn't transfer those skills and knowledge because I honestly didn't know. I just thought I was a good business person. It's funny. You had no business education and money came to me, so I guess I just thought I was good, right? But I couldn't do it again and again and again. And so this is, of course, what Carl Jung was saying. Remember, I use this quote a lot. Remember what he said about making the unconscious conscious. We don't make it conscious, so we keep being ruled by it and call it fate. Well, in this case, sometimes you can do things and you can stumble in how to do them, but because you don't know what you did, you can't do it again. And he's saying here, you got the people that are getting rich are the ones who do things in the certain way. And the certain way, it ties in with, when you like if you're coaching somebody and they're like, oh, well, I'm going to take what you have, but I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to tweak it. I can see why you would need to do that, JJ, but I'm going to do it slightly differently. And then you don't get the same result if you don't do it in the same way. They want to do it differently. They want to, who am I kidding? This was me for most of my business career. I wanted to do it my way instead of doing it the way that works, the proven way, right? I was going to do it differently because, I was an individual and I was unique. And I think that's so seductive, isn't it? When we look at something, we think, yeah, oh, that's great. And I can see a shortcut of how I could do this over here. I could do that better. And man, I'm the worst for that. Because most of my mentors, they're older white gentlemen. And so in the back of my mind, so many times I'm like, well, I know that works for him, but I need to do it my way. Because, as a black woman holiness preacher, I got all the strikes against me, right? But after a while, you kind of realize you either need to do it the certain way or you need to change your goals. Because if you don't do it the certain way, you're not going to build wealth. And too many for us, for whatever reasons, we have settled in goals that are way less than what God has called us to. See, God has called you to be all of this and to do all of this, but you playing small. You're playing with only this much capacity when God has called you to be this, all right? Or this, some of us, right? Every time, when I was younger, I used to think I was so much more amazing. And the funny thing is the less amazing to do things on my own, the more I realize I need more people and that I can't do it all myself because I'm not amazing enough to do it all myself. It's like the more amazing I actually become. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But what Waddles is saying here is he's like, you got to do it a certain way. Make the decision today. Make the decision today to do exactly what he says, how he said to do it, and the number of times he said to do it until you find out for yourself, okay? Because very often, our intellectual pride doesn't let us take other people's ideas if we secretly think our ideas are better, right? Seth Godin said, the kind of magic language that everyone wants to hear is, you were right all along. Oh, anybody else resemble that remark? That's what we believe, isn't it? You want somebody on your side. So if you can say that to them in certain ways, then like, oh, great, you're my new best friend, right? So the thing is it's really easy to get excited, jump into something, get started, but to commit to one thing and follow it through, that's a whole nother story. And some of us, we've been jumping in, but we ain't followed through on nothing. Our subconscious doesn't even believe we have the capacity. It's time to show our subconscious who's boss around here. All right, line 123. It is a natural law that like causes always produce like effects. That's the law of cause and effect, okay? And therefore, any man or woman who wants to learn to do things in this certain way will infallibly get rich. Infallibly. That means everybody, okay? That the above statement is true is shown by the following facts. And so now he's going to go into tearing down our excuses to what keeps us thinking that we can't do this and provides a convenient reason for us to not even bother to try. Okay? So, line 126. Getting rich is not a matter of environment, for if it were, all the people in certain neighborhoods would become wealthy. People of one city would all be rich, while those in other towns would all be poor, or the inhabitants of one state would roll in wealth, while those in adjoining states would be in poverty. Okay? So then he says, but everywhere we see rich and poor living side by side in the same environment and often engaged in the same vocations. Okay? So when where was I? So when two guys are in the same locality, two guys, they're in the same business, one will get rich and the other one will remain poor. And it shows that getting rich is not primarily a matter of environment. Now, sure, some environments may have more favorable results than others, right? But when two people in the same business, in the same neighborhood, one gets rich and the other fails, it indicates that getting rich is a result of doing things in a certain way. Okay? If you're in the personal growth space and you're not making money, especially right now with COVID and the pandemic, you can't keep saying, oh, look, I'm doing everything. Okay? You can't keep saying that. You're doing something wrong. Your offer's wrong. Your price is wrong. You're not communicating the value of what you have. You're not antagonizing a problem. You're not solving a problem. You're not creating a future positive. There's something you're not doing right. I know you're doing activity. And I know you're going all in, right? I know you're working hard, right? I believe that. And I believe that you're doing it. But what I need you to do is to stop and go back and really micro-tweezer it out. You need to read everything. Record yourself and listen to your ask. Read your emails. This system has worked for generations. It didn't just stop working because of you. It's worked for thousands of other people. And I'll give you a simple but embarrassing story. People always say I take great pictures, but I actually don't take great pictures or video. And I had to really work on actually looking presentable. Because half the time the video or pictures, if I'm not paying attention to how I look, the picture and the videos make me look super wonky. And I resisted when people said, well, record yourself and watch yourself. I didn't want to do that. I didn't have time for that, right? But that's what people who want to get better at public speaking do. And so then when I saw it, I was like, oh, well, that explains why I'm not selling a whole lot, right? So the fact that it's not working for you tells me there's something you're doing wrong. And if you're at least willing to accept the possibility that you're doing something wrong, well, then you can fix it. One time I had no idea how messed up a new version of my website was, and it was so embarrassing, y'all. A couple years ago, I'm sitting in with this couple in my office in the Pierre Berger Mall. I'd already done offended them, right? Because he was a vet and they both had some health issues and they were significantly overweight. And I encouraged him to go to the VA, which he took great offense to because he felt like I was just one of these people that just wants money for nothing, right? Like, I don't know why he would assume that about me. I mean, he was a referral from Dave Ramsey. But I was like, look, just because you're telling me you had a day job where you sat at a desk, you weren't on a flight line, you don't have any idea what fumes you may have smelt from the flight line. You don't know what was really in those vaccines that they gave you. Just go to the VA, let them check you over, and get some of your stuff documented now, because later on down the line, if that's a service-connected disability, then you'll get that covered when it grows to where you really need some care, And So this whole interview was just going wrong. It was going all kinds of wrong because everything I was saying was offending them. And other people that I've said these exact same words to, they were just like, wow, I didn't know I could do this, or I didn't know this could count, or wow, I didn't know that maybe I could get some of my medical bills paid, Well, I really drove in the last nail in the coffin, y'all, when I took them to my website to show them how to sign up for coaching. And I had just updated the website a week or two prior. And now, instead of the button being right there on the thing, it took me like 20 clicks. I couldn't even find it myself, y'all. And so, some of us, we're so quick to be in a situation like that and blame everybody else. But we have to be open. We have to be open to saying there is a process. There is a science. And if I'm not getting it, maybe it's me. And it starts with challenging. It starts with challenging your belief that you don't have a birthright to be rich. Because if you're absolutely convinced you're doing everything, if you're going to really dig in, well, you get what you fight for. What you fight for, you get. And if you're going to fight for the fact that you can't do it, then that's what you're going to get. The only thing that's consistent in all of this is you. So we have to be willing to look at things. Are we doing things in a certain way? Line 139. And further, the ability to do things in the certain way is not due solely to the possession of talent, for many people who have great talent remain poor, while others who have little talent get rich. You see how he's taken away our excuses, right? He goes on to say, studying the people who have got rich, we find that they are an average lot in all respects, having no greater talents and abilities than other men. It is evident that they do not get rich because they possess talents and abilities that other men have not, but because they happen to do things in a certain way. Okay? So now we're seeing it's not about your environment. It's not about whether you started off rich. Some of those things make a difference in how steep a road you have to challenge, but they don't keep you from being rich. Your talents and abilities, just because now he's going to talk a little bit about talent later, but just because you aren't the most talented doesn't mean you can't build the most wealth. Now, we're going to move on to line 146, and I'm going to tell you, this was one of those concepts that really got under my skin until I learned about the difference between prosperity mindset and scarcity mindset. Line 146. Getting rich is not the result of saving or thrift. Many penurious people are poor, while free spenders often get rich. Let me just tell you something, all right? Unless you're in abject poverty, and I have worked with some clients who are in abject poverty, and I mean the kind of poverty where you can't afford cable or a cell phone or any of those needs that are really wants, okay? Then if you're spending Saturday 3 hours clipping coupons to save money on cereal, maybe your time would be better spent to use those 3 hours to build a business. I have found that you cannot save your way to rich. You cannot save your way to rich by driving a hard bargain. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to save that. You're not going to save the money to be rich by clipping coupons and saving $1 off. Now look, who doesn't like to get a bargain, right? Who doesn't want a bargain? Who doesn't want to get 2 for 1, right? I get that. And when I was $845,000 in debt, I absolutely lived by the coupon circular and shopping for bargains. I mean, I would go around and find people who didn't want their Sunday paper, and I would clip them things, right? But I also didn't have cable, and I didn't have a smartphone, and I didn't have all these things that we buy, and then we say we can't do anything about our poverty. See, we have. And I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to challenge you. Before you dismiss your birthright to be rich because you think you don't have enough to get out there and make more money, I'm going to challenge you to really look at what you're doing. And I don't even shop. I mean, I did back then, but I don't even shop with coupons much anymore because guess what I discovered back then? I discovered that all that coupon clipping was not saving me on what I really needed. What I really needed was time to play with my son. And most of those coupons, quite frankly, were on overpriced items that I didn't need anyway. You want a coupon? Okay, do it extreme, make a business out of it, But don't drive 10 miles out of your way to save 3 cents on gas. We think these things matter, but in the great scheme of things, it almost doesn't. If you like couponing, you enjoy it, and you got nothing better to do with your time, like I didn't when I was brokered and broke, okay, well then maybe it's great to go through. It's entertaining and it's fun. But if you could go out and earn money, how much are you actually saving per hour by doing that with the coupons? Or could you be using that time to grow yourself or read a book? It's about knowing the value of your time and the mindset behind which you do it. Are you coming from a mindset of scarcity or a mindset of prosperity? You're going to go out of your way for an hour to save maybe $20. Now, for some people, that might be a good use of their time. But for most of the people listening and watching today, you would be better off investing that hour in picking up the phone and cold calling clients, calling people to join your coaching program, and put in the time to get really good at studying your ask or you're studying your presentation. You could be practicing your presentation. You could record it. You could listen to it. You can be super critical with yourself and study yourself like a third party. Most people have got great advice for other people, but they don't do it with themselves. And I can just tell you this. Once you understand how to make yourself valuable, you'll never have to worry about asking for your worth. You never will. And the best investment you're going to make of time and money is in your own personal growth and development. Particularly your ability to communicate. So if you walk into an organization, if you're going for a job interview and you speak convincingly, you stand up and you're articulate, you look confident, and you stand out a mile, y'all. And within an organization, if you're already in that organization, you can define your leadership within that organization by standing up and speaking, even for just a minute or two, comfortably and convincingly. People just assume when you can speak well that you can do everything else well. Look at politicians, huh? The one who wins is usually, all things being equal, the one who is the best communicator. They may not have the best experience. They may not even be the most qualified. But if they can communicate and connect with an audience better than the other one, well, they are going to win. And there's so much more. There's so much more able to, if we connect with someone, if we like them, then we're so forgiving, right? We're so forgiving with their faults and their frailties. And so it makes a difference being able to connect. So let me go back to the couponing. I'm not telling you it's not to coupon, okay? I'm just asking you to challenge the belief that that's the best path for you, because maybe that hour would be better spent. All right, line 148. He's also saying that nor is getting rich due to doing things which others fail to do, for two men in the same business often do exactly the same things, and one gets rich while the other remains poor. or bankrupt or becomes bankrupt. Whoo! From all these things, we must come to the conclusion that getting rich is a result of doing things in a certain way. Think about restaurants, I live in Texas now, in a county with 10,000 people total. Seems like there is a Mexican place on every corner. It's like one for every 10 people, I swear. That's like high Mexican restaurants per capita in this county, right? And you got 2 places in town that are so packed. My husband sends me early to the one to grab him and his coworkers a table. Otherwise, they're not going to make it in and out for lunch. And the other one, it's just hopeless. You're not going to make it in time. So they just stopped trying, right? But all the others, no cars in the lot. No cars. Nobody's parked there. I don't even see employees' cars. I see the open sign. But what makes the difference there, right? It's not Michelin star or anything. Standard menu. Tacos, fajitas, carne asada, right? Nothing special. But there's something different. They're doing it in a different way, in a certain way. Line 153. Getting rich is the result of doing things in a certain way. And like causes always produce like effects. Then any man or woman who can do things in that way can become rich. And the whole matter is brought within the domain of exact science. So, people do it, it works. So now you got to settle the question of, will it work for you? Okay, line 158, next page on this version. The question arrives here, whether this certain way may not be so difficult that only a few may follow it. Okay, this cannot be true, as we have seen, so far as natural ability is concerned. Talented people get rich and blockheads get rich. Intellectually brilliant people get rich and very stupid people get rich. Physically strong people get rich and weak and sickly people get rich. Excuse me. You see what we're going at here? Okay? You see what we're going at here? Some degree of ability to think and understand, of course, is essential. But in so far as natural ability is concerned, any man or woman, I love how he included women back then, any man or woman who has sense enough to read and understand these words can certainly get rich. So if you understand what I'm saying today, great. You're in. All right. Let's go back up to line 165. Also, we have seen that is not a matter of environment. Okay. Now, location counts for something. One would not go into the heart of the Sahara and expect to do successful business. Getting rich involves the necessity of dealing with man and being with where there are people to deal with. And if these people are inclined to deal in the way you want to deal, so much the better. But that's about as far as environment goes. And I want to underline this, particularly getting rich involves the dealing with men and women. Because what we're talking about, getting rich, which is money, we've already said that the money is an idea and it is exchanged for a value. So you have got to be providing value to someone in order to get the money. So you have to have people there to deal with. And a lot of people are like, well, I don't like dealing with people. And I understand that. Come on. Internet's changed everything, okay? Amazon doesn't ever deal with people. I mean, have you ever talked to somebody from Amazon? So if he were writing this today, he'd probably say you need to exchange with people a lot, and you possibly could be in the Sahara and get rich as long as you got good internet. And it costs money to have good internet. Rockefeller, who was big right about this time that Wallace wrote this, he said, I will pay more for the ability to get along than other people. I will pay more for the ability to get along with other people than any other skill. Let me just say that again because I want that quote to be good. Rockefeller, who was big around that time, he said, I will pay more for the ability to get along with people than any other skill. And this is why, because I think maybe one of the most, maybe one of the most, but I think it's one of the most difficult skills is is one people shy away from a lot, because this communicating and this connecting with people, for many of us, is not natural or not easy. And so it's one of the highest valued because most people don't get good at it, and most of us aren't naturally good at it, okay? So be easy to deal with, be likable, be easy to work with, make it easy for people to say yes, exceed people's expectations. You provide a good value and a great service, greater value than the cash, okay? When you provide a service, you provided a greater value than the cash value you're taking in exchange. You can solve a problem, you know? If anybody else in your town can get rich, so can you. If anybody else in your state can get rich, so can you. It's not a matter of choosing a particular business or profession. People get rich in every business. Look, there's somebody rich in the binder clip business. There's somebody rich in the thimble business. There's somebody rich in shoelaces. I love Jim Rohn's line where he said, people would complain this company doesn't pay well. No, this company just doesn't pay you very well. There are people here that the company pays very well. There's so many different ways that a company can compensate people who've got the right attitude and work hard. But some people end up getting much more than others doing the same jobs. Or they're doing them differently because they were much better and provided much more value. I remember before I met several NFL players, go Steelers. I remember thinking how unfair it was that they made all that money. I mean, never mind the taxing of their bodies and their brains and how difficult life is afterward for some of them, you know, but you might say, well, nobody's worth that much money. But think about it. Somebody is paying them. They're getting paid, so they must be worth it to someone. They're getting paid, so they must be worth more than what they're getting paid to whoever it is that paid them, right? Somebody sees value in somebody being able to catch a football for the Pittsburgh Steelers, okay? So you can look at sports athletes, you can look at basketball players, and you think, wow, man, nobody is worth $26 million a year to play basketball, right? Well, the way things are organized right now in this world, yeah, they are. Even public speaking. Think about one of my mentors, John Maxwell. He's a good example, isn't he? You think about $125,000 for a speech. I mean, for an hour-long speech. Is anybody really worth $125,000 for an hour? Well, he's very, very good. That's why entire countries ask him to come in and change the whole country, because he's very, very good. And one of the things that we might as well talk about now is this law of compensation, okay? And so we're going to spend a few minutes on that. And I'm just going to tell you, when you can get this in your head, when you really get this into your head and make agreement with it, you can look at your life and you can say, well, where am I? It will change your life. Compensation is very clear. The amount of money a person makes is always in direct proportion to the need for what they do, their ability to do it, and the difficulty there is in replacing them. Period. Number one is the need. Now, chances are you've got nothing to do with the need for what you do. Okay, God created that need. I didn't create a need for the science of getting rich. I didn't create a need for financial empowerment. That need was there. I'm answering the need. So you can ask yourself, well, is there a need for what you do? Is there a need for thimbles? Sure. Is there a need for shoelaces? Yes. Is there a need for binder clips? Yes. Okay, so there is a need. Now the next thing is your ability to do it. Remember, the three things you need to have is the need for what you do, the ability to do it, and how easy it is to replace you, okay? So your ability to do it. How good are you? And I've heard it many times, and I tend to agree that we mass produce average. I mean, we are blown away, and then whenever you get like one little drop of excellence everywhere, because everybody is so average. And I'm no longer a price shopper. I'm a value shopper. I want the best product that'll meet my need and be the best possible service behind it at a fair price. So if you go to a normal gas station and you get this person who looks up and who's smiling and friendly and they stick out, they stand out. You go to Starbucks and you get somebody who shines above everybody else. Well, people who are not average stick out because they're not average. All right? They stick out. They really do. You think about interviewing for a job. You're going to love this. This is a nugget you can take with you, okay? You can absolutely prepare for it. And you can think of the questions you're going to be asked. And it's actually pretty simple. There's loads of books and websites out there that list questions. You can look them up on the internet. There's like lists of these curveball crazy questions like you've got 2 buckets and you need to get 3 gallons of water from one into the other. Just weird questions. And you can actually look them up and you can prepare great answers that will show you at your best and all the experience that you have. And then you can practice and you can video yourself and you can look at it. So what's a common interview question? Tell me about your last boss. And what's the mistake that most of us make? They start saying, oh my goodness, she was such a nightmare. They completely ruin it because, everybody, not everybody, but most people don't like being told what to do. And so their boss telling them what to do creates friction. And now they're out of that environment. And they feel free to express themselves. And so immediately the interviewers are like, red flag, red flag. This is a troublemaker over here. First thing out the gate. Old boss was this, that, and that, okay? So don't criticize, okay? You got to have good things to say about your boss. And if they push for something that's wrong with the boss, the only thing you need to do is come up with something like, they smoke. Yeah, actually, now that you mentioned it, they're a smoker, and I really don't like that, okay? You don't want to be average. You want to stand out. It's easy to stand out, especially when times are tough and everyone's head is down. If you are optimistic and outgoing in an organization and you're trying to make your boss look good and help your boss to do well, you stand out like a mile in front of most teams because most of the rest of the people are not doing that. Like Zig Ziglar said, help enough people get what they want and you can get anything you want. Our society mass produces average. And I want you to ask yourself, how well do you do what you do? Like, how well do you really do what you do? What stands out? Notice at Chick-fil-A, they never say, you're welcome. When you thank them for something, it's always my pleasure. That sticks out, right? It's not average. It's just these little things. Okay? So, how good are you? How much time have you taken to really add value? When was the last time you looked at yourself and said, could I do better? Could I do better? What's a way that I could do this better? Because when you do that, you put yourself in position for the third part of this law. You become impossible or difficult to replace. And the need for what you do, they need your ability to do it, and then the difficulty with which you can be replaced. All right? So it's got to be something of value within the organization. Now, it could be great that you love decorative beads or something like that, but if there's not a need for it, or if it's a very small need, then maybe you need to be extraordinarily good at it, or you need to go to great lengths to find customers for whatever it is that you want to do. If you haven't taken my Why Businesses Fail class, I go through the 17 different businesses that I've tried and how some of those things, they were just things that were important to me, but they weren't important to the rest of the world. Not enough for them to pay, and certainly not enough for them to donate. and that's a part of it as well, okay? So you've got to, whatever you're doing, it's got to be something that people want, okay? It's got to be something that people want. We're talking about exchanging money. We're exchanging money for that service, and you are going to provide. All right? Let me get my book back here. Line 172. Again, it is not a matter of choosing some particular business or profession. People get rich in every business, in every profession, while their next door neighbors in the same vocation remain in poverty. It is true that you will do your best in a business that you like and which is congenial to you. And if you have certain talents that are well developed, you will do the best in a business that calls for the exercise of those talents. Also, you will do best in business which is suited for your locality. An ice cream parlor would do better in a warm climate than in Greenland, and a salmon fishery would succeed better in Northwest than in Florida, where there are no salesmen. Did I say salesman? I'm getting tired, y'all. I meant to say salmon. I know I'm getting tired. And I'm reading it too, so I don't even have any excuse, right? An ice cream parlor would do better in a warm climate than in Greenland, and a salmon fishery will succeed better in the Northwest than in Florida, where there are no salmon, okay? Whew. He goes on to say, line 182, but aside from these general limitations, getting rich is not dependent upon your engaging in some particular business, but upon your learning to do things in a certain way. If you're now in business and anybody else in your locality is getting rich in the same business while you are not getting rich, it is because you are not doing things in the same way that the other person is doing them. Now, this was a bitter pill for me to swallow at first because it really came down to getting along better with people for me. Okay, that was my stumbling block. It might be different for you. Being able to connect with people and share your value and explain how you solve the problem that they're stuck in or prevent the problem looming that's in their future, that's how you show how you communicate value. And as a high D, it's not natural for me to want to spend time talking about my mom and them before we get to the business, all right? If we've set up a business Zoom, then I show up, I want to get to it. We can chit-chat after the fact, after the work is done. And, a lot of you, like me, you got into business for yourself because you didn't want to be beholden to other people. But guess what? Other people are who will exchange their money for your value. And so if you've never taken a DISC assessment or communication assessment, then I encourage you to get with me offline. Because when I found out that only 1% of women think the way I do, it changed my business. So in a town of 10,000 people, which this county apparently has, only 10 women in that entire county are going to think like me. I can't get rich appealing to only 10 women. And when I was living in Shreveport, when I discovered this, Shreveport, Bossier, that whole little metroplex, 170,000 people. Okay, so I might be comfortable, but I won't be rich off of 165 people. But then you could say, well, there are other women who are making money, and if they are, and you aren't, then what he's saying here is you're not doing things the same way. You could be doing the same task, but are you joyful in doing it? Are you taking that little extra step to add a little extra value? There's a lot of industries, even the military, okay? They're all doing the same thing. Everybody's doing the same thing. Everybody's got the same job. But you know what? Everybody's not doing the same thing. They're not doing it all the same way. Some excel because of their mindset and how they think about what they're doing. And for those of you that already have the book, which if you don't, you can get it on Amazon, all right? Notice that this chapter is not called Doing the Same Thing. It's called a certain way. Okay? There's a certain way, not doing the same thing. You could be doing the same thing, but not doing it in the certain way. And don't worry, he's going to get to what that way is in the last chapter, okay? So you'll need to register for the course to see that, because I'm definitely about to be out of time here. And so what Waddles is doing here is he's preparing us. First he challenged our beliefs, then he took away our excuses. All right? So here comes another excuse on line 189. No one is prevented from getting rich by lack of capital. True. I can tell you, I started all of my businesses with less than $1,000. And some have closed because they weren't making as much profit, and I sold the web hosting company, but none of them lost money. I just found things that made more money. And a lot of people buy into this excuse. He talks about it here when he says that nobody is prevented from getting rich by lack of capital. You got to have money to make money. Isn't that what we believe, right? And so therefore, if you don't have any money, you can't make any money. Well, isn't that convenient? You don't have any money, so you're off the hook for making more. Remember, if you don't try to develop yourself, including your wealth, to the highest capacity that the Lord gifted you to, then you are effectively scoffing at God's offerings. I can't afford the money. I don't have the money for this. If you have the right attitude, someone will come in and meet the need. You have been fully resourced by your Creator with everything you need to develop to the fullest potential that He put in you in the first place. No one is prevented from getting rich by lack of capital. True, as you get capital, the increase becomes easy and more rapid, but one who has capital is already rich and does not need to consider how to become so. No matter how poor you may be, if you begin to do things in a certain way, you will begin to get rich and you will begin to have capital. Hear that? It's not about do you have enough money to make money. If you do things in a certain way, you'll start to get some money. And then you can do whatever you need to do to take yourself to the next level, right? No matter how poor you'll be, let me read that again. No matter how poor you may be, if you begin to do things in a certain way, you'll begin to get rich. People with resources will see something in you. When you're enthusiastic and you project this kind of competence and you're an expert, you've got it. When you do that, it happens in a blink of an eye. What you're communicating, the value you're communicating in a blink of an eye, that's the certain way. It doesn't take a lot more to be interesting, but it does take more. You've got to actually take the time to, because information is the first mile. Making things interesting is going to be your second mile. And so you want to do these things. You want to go the extra mile, okay? You want to, if you're a speaker, you want to take the information. You want to take the information and give it, but you don't want to do like I did and just pack fact after fact after fact. People want to be entertained a little bit, okay? So you want to make it interesting. All right. I'm sorry, y'all. I can tell I'm getting so tired. I try to manage my energy so that when I do these things that I don't get tired on you, but that's one of the side effects of all these car accidents, and that's something that, normally I don't like the public to see, but I'm kind of out of time to re-record this. And I'm really kind of also out of time to edit. So it's just what it is, okay? Just pray for me, all right? But going back here to line 191, he says, no matter what, we just read that. Maybe I need to read it again. No matter how poor you may be, if you begin to do things in a certain way, then you will begin to get rich. You'll begin to have capital. The getting of capital is part of the process of getting rich, and is a part of the result that invariably follows from the doing things in the certain way. Okay? You may be the poorest man on the continent or deeply in debt. Oh. Isn't this interesting what he's saying here? It's not about doing certain things. It's about doing things in a certain way. Line 195, okay? Now, he goes on to say, you may have neither friends, influence, nor resources, but if you begin to do things in this way, you must infallibly begin to get rich. How many of you are struggling? He has said that same phrase like 4 times in this chapter. You must infallibly begin to get rich. For like causes must produce like effects. If you have no capital, you can get capital. If you are in the wrong location, you can go to the right location. And you can do so by beginning in your present business and in your present location to do things in the certain way which causes success. I love that last sentence. Wherever you want to go, you're going to get there from where you are right now. And, the curriculum for our growth is whatever is going on in our life, whatever lies in front of you. So right now, starting here, okay? If you're in an organization that you don't like, well, then that's where you're starting. There's a lot of growth for you, okay? And I'm sure even in that organization, even though you may not like your boss or that company, or maybe you're unemployed or wherever you are, you just start where you are, right here, right now. Oh, I love that, okay? As a financial planner who helps people become full-time entrepreneurs, I get folks who say, oh, I want to quit my job. I want to start coaching or speaking full-time. And when you dig into it, they have no savings. They got a wife and 3 kids, no additional streams of income. And I'm like, I don't know that quitting your job is really going to help solve your problem. Let's dig into what the problem is that you're trying to solve. And when they come down to it, they want to quit because it's a dysfunctional and toxic environment. Ooh, I've been there. Truly I have. So I totally get it, okay? But what most of you who attend my classes, you want to be world changers. You want to be change agents to help. You want to be coaches and speakers and trainers. So why don't you start right there? If you're in this situation, you don't know how to get out of it, you know it's fertile ground, start right there and create the program to address the dysfunction. Create the program that would create cultural change. They're paying you to be there. The worst that could happen is no change. But the best that could happen is it'd be your own little lab experiment, because it's really a perfect condition to grow. And what you do is, regardless of the toxicity and the dysfunction around you, when you embark on a plan to try and change it, or when you embark on a plan of personal self-growth, or you put together a plan, period, for you being able to acquire what you need, for people like me to feel comfortable with you quitting your job, what you're really doing is taking back your personal power. And sometimes that's just the energy you need to open up new opportunities. I encourage you to bloom where you're planted. It's not about environment. It's not about talent and abilities. It's not about scrimping and saving. It's not about doing different things. It's not things that are too difficult. And it's not because you're not smart enough, and it's not because you don't already have the capital or the influence. Whether you have any of that, you can get it. Those things don't matter. What matters is doing things in what Waddles calls the certain way. Now, if you want to learn more about that certain way, I hope you will join me Monday by registering for the class at jjclink.com/SOGR for Science of Getting Rich. I want to close with the last paragraph from the first chapter. Does anybody remember that? Let me get that out here. All right, so I want to close with this last paragraph. It says, "It is perfectly right that you should give your best attention to the science of getting rich. You can render to God and to humanity no greater service than to make the most of yourself." You can render to God and humanity no greater service than to make the most of yourself. And I believe that includes your health, wealth, and spiritual growth. That's all I